Sheriff David Clarke, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for being an example of a real peace officer instead of one of these government types that's there to demonize the Bill of Rights. Thank you for defending the Constitution, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on with you, and it's a pleasure to serve. I'm independently elected, as you indicated, sheriffs are. So we serve the people. I don't report to another bureaucrat or another political official like a police chief. Really works for the mayor. I work for the people. I'm accountable to the people, the voters. And what I've always done since I've been the sheriff, it's been 10 years now, is I give people unvarnished information. I just lay it out for them. Don't sugarcoat it. Say, hey, here's the reality. Here's what's going on, so that people then can take that information and come to their own conclusions and their own decisions about what they should do as it relates to public safety. I believe in empowering citizens to make those decisions. I think that an armed citizen is nothing for me to worry about. What I'm worried about is a felon or another criminal who has demonstrated that they'll use a firearm to commit a crime. I'm more worried about individuals like that.
Let's get into what Piers Morgan wouldn't let you talk about. You kept trying to say why you had said it's time for people to go get firearms training and protect themselves. What's going on in Milwaukee County and in the city itself?
Well, there's been a recent increase, a surge, if you will, and it's not just an anomaly of some street violence where innocent people are getting caught in crossfire, they're getting guns stuck to their heads, their wallets taken, their cars taken. Street robberies, and then we've had homes. There's a rash of burglaries going on in the Milwaukee area, 300 in the month of August alone. And, I looked at that, and then I saw that Mayor Barrett was furloughing 1,500 Milwaukee police officers, 3 days each, for 2013. That means 4,500 fewer officer days to answer 911 calls for service. They're inundated. They're drowning in 911 calls, the street cops. It's not the fault of the cops, it's just not given the resources. And then also the county executive, Chris Abley, laid off 48 sheriff's deputies in my office last year, tried to lay off some more before. And so I look at that and I said, there's an emerging situation here that people have always had the right to do. And I talk about in the ad personal security. That's an individual responsibility. I don't get to say how and when a person should defend themselves in these situations, and in the case of their home being broken into, and I refer to it as, when the wolf's at the door, 911 is not going to help you. The ad doesn't say don't call 911. You heard it. It says that might not be your best option. And in many of these instances that I just described, it doesn't. Now, Barrett and Abley, and even Police Chief Ed Flynn, they basically communicated to the law-abiding people of Milwaukee County that you're on your own. We're not going to provide the resources for the police to do everything that they can to create a safe environment. Citizens, you're on your own. We're abandoning you. And I thought, well, this is as fundamental a concept as we have in America, the concept of self-defense. And I thought there's two things that went on over the last 18 months in Wisconsin, where the legislature empowered individuals to deal with these situations, not to go out and police the streets, but in terms of personal security. One is Castle Doctrine, where now if an intruder breaks into your home, you can use force up to and including deadly force to ward off that attack, to protect you, your children, whatever. And the onus is on the criminal now to explain why he was in your house, whereas before Castle Doctrine, you had to explain, the homeowner had to explain why it was reasonable to use deadly force. The other thing is the Personal Protection Act, which allows people to go out and get a permit, and there's a process, and then they can go armed with a concealed weapon. So I'm trying to leverage those two things to get people in these that are stuck in these situations, and that's what it is when somebody comes up and sticks a gun into your back or against your head and demands your wallet or your car. You're in a situation where 911 is not going to help. And I don't tell, if you notice, I don't tell people what to do. I say, here's some things you need to think about, because the time to plan and to decide what your options are is not when the event is happening. It's beforehand. And if that's going to mean that you're going to exercise your Second Amendment right to own and possess and use a firearm, well, you need to think about the training, the safety measures. I mean, anything that is in the hands of the wrong person is dangerous. A chainsaw in the hands of somebody who's never used one, that's dangerous. So I would expect people to read the manual, so on and so forth. And that's what I'm advising, as it comes to firearms.
Well, it's common sense. What would you say to the Chicago police chief who's now come out and said, just ban the Second Amendment? It's the problem. They've taken the guns there. All the criminals then move there and feed on the people. I mean, they've got to know that where you take the guns, it has the highest crime rate. Where you have more guns in the citizens' hands, you have lower crime rate. They're not that stupid, Sheriff Clarke. So what's this really all about then?
Well, this is really about freedom. It's really about liberty, and that's why I mentioned empowering citizens. I trust citizens to make those decisions in their lives, in their personal security, and their personal safety. And apparently, and I didn't hear, in full context what the Chicago chief said, but they're up to their eyeballs in street violence, and they have some of the toughest gun laws known to mankind. And I guess that I would say that is Exhibit A to demonstrate that those things don't work. So what I'm trying to do here is give people advice up front to consider these things, to have a plan in place should that happen to them. And then they got to decide. It's not for me. Like I said in the ad, you can hide under the bed. You can beg for mercy from a violent criminal. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. Maybe that's the best thing in that situation, but it's not for me to say. So I want to make sure that the people of Milwaukee County and the 155,000 people who have applied for these personal protection permits, and that was in the first year alone, I want them on my side. And we're going to be partners in this thing. And if you're going to be partners with me, then you have to be prepared. Now, we had an interesting situation several summers ago where the mayor, Tom Barrett, was out without his protective bubble. He gets taxpayer paid for armed security staff, police officers, and he should have that. I don't want to take that away from him, but he lives life in a bubble. And he stepped outside that bubble several summers ago, and he was walking down the street with his family, and he intervened in a domestic dispute. And a guy who was involved in that dispute grabbed a tire iron and beat the mayor mercilessly within inches of his life. I mean, it was a severe beating. And I would like to think, 911 didn't help the mayor that day, and he didn't have that protective bubble. But since that happened,
if I was a mayor, guaranteed I'd be wearing a gun on my hip and a fanny pack. I mean, exactly. He's an idiot. I mean, you're going to try to intervene in the most dangerous situation, a domestic event, and you're not going to be armed? I mean, he deserved it almost.
Well, that's how clueless this individual is. And so I would like to think that he'd be a little more sensitive to the plight of everyday Americans and citizens living in the Milwaukee area who have to live with these threats and this violence on a day-to-day basis, and they don't have the bubble of protection that he has. And instead of him being a little more sensitive because he now experienced what real life is like outside that bubble, he still wants to take this availability away from law-abiding citizens, and I think it's ridiculous. I think it's terrible.
It is crazy. And again, I'm sad he got beaten within an inch of his life, but not being armed and then trying to get involved in something dangerous, that's like playing in traffic. And we do see these big urban centers are the only areas where crime is going up, where you don't tend to have people armed just because, I guess, culturally, across racial lines as well, people in big cities, for whatever reason, a lot of times don't think they need guns. I guarantee you, if I lived in a big, dangerous city, I would have guns even more readily at hand. Living out in the country.
Well, as you indicated early on in this conversation, the Constitution, and I tell people, the Second Amendment to me is as sacred as the First Amendment. I think they go hand in hand. And, we've already, and I know they're not absolute. The Second Amendment is not absolute, neither is the First. But we've shaved enough off the Second Amendment with some of these gun control measures, many of them that didn't work, but we've shaved enough. And the essence of the Second Amendment, it says in part, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think we've infringed enough on law-abiding people to be able to keep and bear arms for whatever reason. I realize that has to do with tyrannical government, but at the same time, the concept of self-defense in this country, the United States of America, is very fundamental. And I want to use that. I'm not afraid of a law-abiding citizen with a And I'll say it again. I'm afraid of a criminal perpetrator because they've demonstrated time and time again they will use that instrumentality to commit a crime.
Well, what about the mayor's spin that, criminals can get all these handguns? He put up this 40% number. From the statistics I've seen and what you've tried to talk about, that's not a real number.
It's not a real number at all. He knows that President Obama used the same thing in his speech on, and if you notice how they changed the language, they don't call it gun control because they know that doesn't poll well, and that even people who don't own guns don't like the thought of banning everybody from possessing a firearm. But they're using data that's patently false. Now, Tom Barrett went on CNN with Piers Morgan and said 40% of handgun sales in the United States occur without a background check. That is a patent lie. That is patently false. He's using some statistic, some research that was flawed on its face from 1997 where 200 people were polled. There's 300 million people in the United States. It's not even a statistically legitimate sample pool to poll 250 people and come out with something that would stand a plus or minus. They always put in the
sure. But my argument is this: criminals are always going to get guns. Mexico has a total gun ban, and they have the highest crime rate in the world next to a city like Chicago. It's the highest city, but as a country, Mexico, almost 60,000 deaths. In fact, I think it's over that now in the last 5.5 years. And they've taken the guns. Only the criminals have the guns, and a corrupt government bought off by the criminals. I mean, you take the guns in Chicago, Al Capone's still going to have them. What about this issue? Many sheriffs have said, Sheriff Clarke, that if executive orders come down banning semi-autos or whatever, or in New York, they've banned them. They've banned the clips. They're saying turn them in. They've got bills in Missouri that actually say all semi-autos will be turned in. Democratic Party is crazily behind that. Washington State, same bill. 15 states total. Seriously, if they try to physically take semi-autos, I know a lot of veterans and people that have had enough, and I would not want to be the police or sheriff's department ordered by the feds to try to go get guns. What is your take on the fact that, from a lot of analysts I talk to, think that the Obama Marxist types want to start a civil war in this country? I mean, they've got to know what's going to happen if they try to confiscate guns.
Well, first of all, to me, that would be an act of tyranny. So the people of Milwaukee County do not have to worry about me enforcing some sort of order that goes out and collects everybody's handgun or rifles or any kind of firearm and makes them turn them in. And the reason is I don't want to get shot, because I believe that if somebody tried to enforce something of that magnitude, you would see the second coming of an American Revolution, like the likes of which would make the first revolution pale by comparison. So the people in Milwaukee County don't have to worry about me engaging in that sort of tyranny.
You're absolutely right. This country is primed. People have been abused in so many ways. Obama said they're bitter clingers, their guns, their Bibles. We've been deindustrialized. We've had our future sold out. We've been signed on to the banker's debt. And I'm telling you, certain elements of the feds, not the average Fed, because I've talked to a lot of them, are really pushing and really like the junkyard bully, the junkyard dog, or the schoolyard bully. They really want to get this thing going. And I don't think they realize the restraint of the American people is not out of weakness. It's out of good old-fashioned restraint.
Well, first of all, this doesn't have, as you know, this has nothing to do with violence reduction, because the type of violence that we're talking about, that I see on the street in the Milwaukee area on a daily basis, is not even committed using the weapons that the left is trying to ban. They're not using assault rifles. They're not using high-capacity magazines. They're not buying their ammo over the Internet, and they don't care. The criminals could care less about a background check. So, that tells me that they're disingenuous in what they're trying to do. If they were serious about violence reduction, they would get behind me. I'm talking about the left here in Milwaukee County, and join me arm in arm in calling for longer periods of incarceration for repeat career criminals who have demonstrated over and over again that they're going to get a handgun, they're going to get a firearm, and they're going to perpetrate violence. Now, we had a temple shooting, the Sikh temple, several months ago here, very tragic situation in a suburb in Milwaukee County of Oak Creek. That individual, Michael Wade Phillips, I believe his name is, he passed a background check. My understanding is the creep in Aurora, Colorado that shot up the theater, he also passed a background check. This isn't about background checks, of which the overwhelming majority of gun transfers, it goes on anyway. Michael Wade Page, I think I mixed the name up. This isn't about reducing violence. This is about attacking the Second Amendment. This is going after the wrong crowd.
Exactly. Let me ask you this question. Why does the government class, the socialist class, why do they want our guns so bad right now? What are they worried about in the future?
Well, I don't want to get way out there and try to guess at what they're getting at, but really, government control cannot go on as long as people have some sort of ability to say, hey, wait just a doggone minute. And as long as that exists, the government, that's what the government fears. They don't really fear the criminal. They support the criminal after they've been arrested. But what they fear is a law-abiding person.
That's right.
Who's going to look. I mean, read the Declaration of Independence. It's right there where law-abiding people say, enough is enough. You're exerting too much influence in our lives. This is tyrannical, and we're going to stop it.
Wow,
That's what they're worried about. Sheriff
David A. Clarke there in Milwaukee. Folks should support him. 5 seconds left. I bet the public loves your stand.
It's received overwhelming support. It really has.
Well, God bless you, sir. Hope to get you to touch base with us in the future again. Thank you so much for the time, Sheriff.
Thanks. God bless you as well.
All right. Amazing individual. A true patriot.
Infowars.com is proud to introduce the new Infowars skateboards by Alien Workshop. Skaters have always been against the grain socially. Now wake up your friends politically. Just go to InfoWarsStore.com. We have Divide and Conquer or Brainwashing. Then take your deck to your local skate shop, pick out your own trucks, your own wheels, and then hit the streets and wake some people up. Here is legendary skateboarder Jake Nunn.
This one has a lot more concave than I have on my board, and I like concave. It makes it easier to turn and feel the board. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's almost the same shape as mine. It's not really a sport, and it's not really art. It's just kind of freedom, I've listened to Alex Jones for a long time, and I love what Infowars does. I've always loved Alien Workshop, too. I think it's kind of cool you guys got together. This one's pretty nice. Definitely one for the wall, one for the collection. Also good to skate.
Get these limited edition decks at InfoWarsStore.com.
This is Jake Nunn. Get these beautiful new skateboards at Infowars.com. Alien Workshop collaboration. Good stuff.